Good evening, everyone. Good evening. My name is Sydney Chatman. I am your moderator this evening for the Goodman Theatre and the Northwestern Prison Education Program Stateville Voices. Welcome. I'm so happy to have you all here. I hope that you have been able to see our plays from the previous broadcast and that you've switched over so that you can take part in our panel discussion. I just want to first say thank you all for being here, for spending a Friday with us, the weekend of the 4th of July. As some of you may know, this program, and some of you who may not know, this program is done in the comfort of our homes. So you may see a bit of glitch, you may see a bit of slowing down, but just be patient with us because, you know, we're all working with different types of internet and modalities to make this happen. So I want to tell you first off, you are free to ask questions in the chat. So please make sure that you are asking us questions and getting us ready. The way this is going to work, I'm going to introduce our panel. We'll have a couple of questions for the panel to discuss, and then we will open it up to you. Please enjoy this conversation, and I look forward to seeing what you all write and share with your questions. So let's begin. I first want to thank the Goodman Theatre staff, Madeline, Gabby, Lena, Kenmat, Adam, Henry, Rebecca, Denise, Alberto. Thank you so much for making this possible this evening. Thank you so much to our panel for making this possible. So let's get into it. I'm going to introduce you to our first panelist. Her name is Jennifer Lackey. She is the director of the Northwestern Prison Education Program, the Wayne and Elizabeth Jones Professor of Philosophy in Northwestern University. Welcome, Jennifer, and thank you so much for being here this evening.
Delightful.
Wonderful. So our next panelist is Antonio McDowell. Antonio was born and raised in Cook County within the Austin area of west side of Chicago. Mr. McDowell joined the Northwestern Prison Education Program and completed 1 year and 3/4 of college-level Northwestern classes. Was selected as one of the featured playwrights this evening. You saw his wonderful play, Comic Book and Candy. And he survived COVID-19 in Stateville. Well, on Monday, June 22nd, this year, as in a couple of weeks ago, Antonio's sentence was commuted. And on Tuesday, June 23rd, he was released from Stateville Correctional Center. Antonio plans to continue his education at Octon Community College until he earns his associate's degree. And subsequently, he hopes to complete a bachelor's degree alongside of his NPEP, that's the Northwestern Prison Education Program peers on the Northwestern University's Evanston campus. Antonio, thank you so much for being here this evening.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
And now to our next panelist, Joshua Tepfer. He is a partner at Lovey & Lovey. He dedicates most of his time to representing the wrongfully convicted pro bono with the Exoneration Project. His civil rights practice focuses on wrongful convictions and police misconduct. Josh has been involved in the exoneration of over 100 men and women, and he litigates wrongful conviction cases all over the country. He is the lead attorney for the only mass exoneration in the history of Cook County, Illinois, which has thus far resulted in the exoneration of 75 Black Americans framed by a corrupt Chicago police sergeant and his tactical team. Josh, thank you so much for being here this evening.
Thank you for having me.
And our final panelist for this evening is Patrick Persley. He is a youth motivational speaker, a social activist, a writer, and the founder of I Am Kid Culture. Mr. Persley studied law in order to overturn his conviction while in Stateville Correctional Center. He wrote an article which became an Illinois state statute that allowed him to receive the gun test he needed to prove his innocence. Patrick, thank you so much for being here this evening as well.
Thank you for having me. I hope I can be heard. I hope you can hear me good.
Yes, we can hear you. So everyone, you know, before we get started into a deep dive of what's happening this evening and, you know, thinking about all the things that's happening around the world, I just want to ask you first, let's just talk about joy. Tell me, share with me a moment of joy. What made you smile today? Antonio, I'll start with you. What made you smile today?
Oh, well, I've seen a couple of guys that I was locked up with for over 20 years today for the first time. and all of them have done 20 years or better. So we met up today for the first time, and it was a celebration, to see them. So yeah, that's what made me smile today. You know what I mean?
So we can see you now, Antonio. Yes, we can hear you now.
Oh, y'all can hear me?
We heard up until a certain point, but do you want to start over for us?
Oh, yeah, I was saying that I've seen a few guys that I've done a lot of time with. Many of them was in the Max Penitentiary, and we all linked up today. They have also had their cases overturned, and it was a celebration to see them. It's under different light. We all free, smelling the fresh air, feeling the wind on our skin. That made me smile. I know that they struggled like I struggled, and to see them free and to be free with them, it was a wonderful feeling.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Patrick, tell me, what was the joy? What did you have? What was the joy that you had today? What made you smile today?
Just walking my puppy out here in my front yard. I'm blessed. I'm out here in the country, and it's really nice. I got about 2 acres, and I got a little husky. She's about 3 months old. I never had a puppy, so my inner child and the sunlight and the freedom, just being free, the blessing of being free, makes me smile every day.
That's wonderful. Jennifer, tell us, what made you smile today?
Someone from our global marketing team at Northwestern who had made the documentary that we started off with this evening in November back at Stateville sent me 2 pictures of Antonio, one of him in the classroom at Stateville and then one of him on campus yesterday for a photo shoot that the Chicago Tribune did of him. And seeing the contrast between Antonio at Stateville and Antonio on Northwestern's campus being interviewed by the Tribune was just, such a ray of sunshine, especially during these really dark times. So that really made me smile today.
Awesome. Thank you. Josh?
That's an easy one. When we were practicing this recording right when we got on and seeing my client Antonio's face and being able to make jokes about the baseball cap that he's wearing and me being a Cubs fan and being able to talk about those kind of things as opposed to the conversations we were having over the last couple of months, which were so scary and dire and desperate to make sure he got home and was safe. So to be able to have those kind of conversations with my client and get to know him even better now, that brings me a lot of joy.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. So we're going to get right into it, you all. And I want to just check in with Antonio first. I was hoping that you could share, you can start off by telling me your story. Most of the audience just watched your hilarious play, Comic Books and Candy. Could you tell us as an artist about your experience writing the play, as well as what it felt like unexpectedly to be able to watch it in person, in rehearsal? We did a virtual rehearsal. For anyone who doesn't know, we did this virtual rehearsal with our computers all set up, and Antonio was on the other end giving great feedback to the young performers. So just tell us about your story, and then also what it felt like to be in the virtual room with us, having secured your freedom.
Yeah, my story it's a complicated story. I was trained by a corrupt police officer and, convicted. And so that story right there, it's like almost a typical story in America. You get guys, they come through and they be framed, they framed for crimes that they didn't commit and convicted for crimes that they didn't commit. And being convicted of a crime, at the time when I wrote the story, I didn't want to be in such a dark place. I wanted to write a play about something that was laughable, something that we could all laugh at, something that we could share with our kids. And so I took on that, and it was a challenge. because I had to be funny while at the same time experiencing all of the pain that I had to experience. And so, you know, it was the outcome is bittersweet because I never expected to be doing a Zoom and talking about, you know, a play that I wrote, you know, such a wonderful feeling, you know, it's such a wonderful feeling. So it's like, I'm in awe, you know what I mean? It's like, you know, dreaming and, you know, and you wake up and you still feel like you're in that dream state. You know what I mean? You still feel like you're in that dream state, like no one could wake you. They can't wake you, you already woke. And it's beautiful. But you know that it was once a nightmare, you know, but it's no longer a nightmare. It's a reality and it's beautiful. And, you know, it's bittersweet because, you know, I could see the outcome, but it's a lot of brothers that's still down, that's in NPEP, that wrote some wonderful plays, and they deserve to be able to do the same thing I'm doing. And so it kind of pains me, but, you know, experiencing the little kids and looking at their hard work, you know, I've seen a lot of hope. You know what I mean? I've seen a lot of hope, and I was able to give them something. And so, you know, it's great. It's really great. Thank you.
You know, you didn't just give them something. You didn't just give the students something, you gave all of us something. So I just want you to know that what you wrote was so beautiful and so funny. And I told you earlier that I had a great time working with them. These are actual students of mine. Gabriel and Jonathan are former students. Jonathan was in the 5th grade. His brother he's going into 3rd. So it was really nice to have them around, and I hadn't seen them because of COVID. So it was nice to kind of come back and be with them for that time. And Brianna was also, I don't know if you got a chance to see, if you all saw Ain't Nothing Like Quality Time, Brianna Booker is a student of mine as well. She's a teen, she's a preteen, so she's doing her thing in middle school. So I just want to move on to Patrick and kind of hear your story as well, Patrick. Could you tell us your story? Like Antonio, you were wrongfully accused. Like him, you fought for decades to prove your innocence. Eventually, you were exonerated. What role did the Northwestern Prison Education Program play in your ongoing struggle? And what, if anything, has resonated for you in watching the Stateville Voices plays?
Well, my story is much like he said, it's a stereotype. It's become well too often where you see Black males being locked up, convicted on scant or no evidence. I knew in my circumstance that if I was able to secure ballistic testing, I would be able to show my innocence. And the odds of someone in segregation writing just a couple of paragraphs that go into a newsletter published by Bill Ryan and then wind up being signed into legislation by Blagojevich, it's just those numbers, the odds of that happening to me are mind-numbing. So now when I go to the other side of the equation with the education that I've received, taking Jennifer Lackey's class and other classes, Prison Neighborhood Arts Project, a whole host of classes, I was blessed to be able to have a vision to build the I Am Kid Culture movement, and actually bring to life a vision from my mind that was conceived in 2002, and to actually come out here and be somewhat successful doing what I do and having a chance to speak on these issues, not just preaching to the choir, but trying to actually reach young minds to, career trajectory, planning, aptitude testing, little performance arts projects. And you see the art behind me. This is my art that I brought home from Stateville, and then other pieces add on. So the two sides of the equation for me are very vibrant, and it kind of breaks me away from the stereotype, because I kind of make it work for me and help others and build in real time with the story.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Antonio. Do you want to share any more, Antonio, about your process in becoming exonerated before we move on to the next couple of questions? Patrick as well, I would love to hear a little bit more. When I did my research, and I found that you all had spent over 20 years in prison before you were actually exonerated. So just wanted to hear kind of like, you know, the background, how that actually even happens, how it started.
Well, for me, you know, it's still, my case is still pending, so there's a lot of things that I can't speak about right now. But of course, I got my lawyer present, so I'm sure he'll stop me if I begin to say the wrong thing. But my process was rigorous. It was long. It was, you know, most of the time I felt abandoned. You know, to be framed. You know, being framed is one thing, but to be convicted, you know what I mean? To be convicted is a whole nother something. You know, so it freezes your hope. You know, it's like it places you in sort of like a vacuum, like, you know what I mean, where you're suffocating it, and you desperate for some help, and you reach out as much as you reach out, but you know you can't. No one can hear you. So like imagine screaming as loud as you could in a room full of people, but no one can hear you. And that's what this process was like. I screamed for years. And then they heard me. Josh and them heard me. Jennifer Bunjean heard me. You know, and they fought for me. You know, Lackey and them fought for me to help me with the education process. You know, and so I barricaded myself into trying to be something different from what they accused me of being. So when you see me, I don't want you to see someone who was accused. I'm not a victim. Someone done some harm to me, and that's okay. You know, because he didn't break me. You know, I'm still standing. And I think that at the end of this journey, people gonna know my name. They're gonna know my name, and I'm going to stand up for those who he framed, and we're gonna get it together. You know, so it's a sad story, but it's a Black American nightmare. You know, it's a Black American nightmare. It's too easy to throw us away. I come from a community where it's dilapidated, it's broken, it's abandoned. And so when you come from places like that, it makes it susceptible for someone to be able to frame this easy, because no one will miss you. So it's like, you know, 8 minutes, 46 seconds of putting your knee in someone's back. I just didn't die, not physically, but I experienced that 8 minutes and 46 seconds that turned into 23 years of someone standing on my back. You know, so yeah, I got a real story, and it's a painful story. I watched my mom struggle. I watched a lot of loved ones die, you know, but I kept pushing forward. I kept moving. I'm still moving. And sky's the limit. And I bust free. And I ain't going back. And I will not cry. And that's what's up.
That's what's up. Thank you so much, Antonio. Patrick, I'm curious to hear if you'd like to share any more about your story.
I like how he mentioned like a Black American nightmare. While I was in the classes, I actually flipped it. I wrote a piece called The New Black American Success Story. I still had natural life when I gave birth to this grandchild. I know I was also a legal man, and it really taught me about the legal system. My time in prison, you know, the death penalty was still on the table. I faced the death penalty for a crime I didn't do. And to actually, Stateville had a real perverse way of executing people. It's almost like a gala day, where basically they would like media, they did flatters, they would play like movies.
So, Patrick, I'm not sure if you can hear me.
This is my professors I still talk to now. When I was protesting, but this time I had no idea. So I hadn't really advanced in law yet, but I knew that I was working in the law library and I was persevering or trying to. But on these days, one particular day, they did a double execution. And they got the fruit that was picked over to inmates about 8 o'clock at night. And I thought, how devalued. And we were locked on the week, so I wouldn't even watch the actual movies. I just remember coming on, you know, just watching it, take those out in the car, you know, and remember that could be me.
Thank you, Patrick. I'm going to come back to you because I'm not sure if we heard all of what you said, and what you were saying was so powerful. I missed something about something you wrote, and then a double execution. So we're going to come back to you. We're going to try to see about the connection issues, but I do want to hear what you had to say because what you were saying was so important. So we'll come back to you in a moment, and I'll move on to Jennifer, and we'll troubleshoot some things with your connection. And I want to ask Jennifer, in your research, you have found a link to education and recidivism rates. The higher the degree, the lower the recidivism. How has the Northwestern Prison Education Program been instrumental in doing this? What, in your opinion, has kept you so passionate about the work that you're doing?
So thank you, Sydney. So the research, the data about the connection between education and recidivism rates has been done. There's a lot of different studies that have been done, and the data is pretty reliable. So people who obtain an associate degree while they're incarcerated, the recidivism rate drops to about 14%. For a bachelor's degree, it drops to slightly over 4%. And with a master's degree, it drops to 0%. So there's pretty reliable data showing that education is one of the most effective means of positively intervening in the criminal justice system. Obviously, we're at a time where there's like a national reckoning with policing and incarceration, and I think calls to abolish these institutions as we know them, and I am very much in favor of these movements. I think we see our work as harm mitigation within the context of these institutions. So prison education is a way of providing very successful paths for reentry, and the Northwestern Prison Education Program is the only one in the state that's providing a comprehensive liberal arts education. So we aim to provide the same education that our on-campus students in Evanston and Chicago receive, and we aim to provide that at Stateville. This upcoming fall, we'll be expanding to Logan Correctional Center, so we're going to be expanding to provide the same opportunities that we provide at Stateville to men, now to women who are incarcerated in Illinois. And I think what keeps me most engaged and committed to the work is, well, the students. I mean, I've been a professor for 20 years. I've taught at some of the best institutions in the nation, and the students that I've had at Stateville have been among my absolute favorite students. They bring so much passion and commitment and wisdom to the classroom. And we've offered a lot of combined educational opportunities at Stateville, where we bring, for instance, JD students from our law school, or we bring undergraduates from our Evanston to learn alongside the students in NPEP. And those are some of the most powerful educational experiences that our students have had, is learning alongside their NPEP classmates. And so I think that it's the students and the fact that without NPEP, Illinois would be leaving all of these talented men and women in the state to spend hours in their cells without providing them with the sort of opportunities that I think an education provides.
You know, I'm going to just kind of skip and come back, but it was making me think about, you know, the school to prison pipeline. And Andre Patterson, one of our students and playwrights for the parameters of closeness, he mentioned that the program helps to help, then this is his quote, helps me break down some of the barriers that have been created in me since like a child. Barriers of self-doubt, thinking that I can't do something, that I can't finish, that I can't figure something out. So that's been a challenge for me, to fight through these inadequacies my whole life. It's an ongoing process. I was thinking about this quote. He says it in the video that we screened earlier. And it made me think about my experience as an educator for 17 years. I've been teaching young people. And reminding myself that as an educator, it is our duty to make sure that what we say, what we bring to the classroom is encouraging, that is thoughtful, so that a student not, you know, that's with us is not feeling the way that Andre felt when he was a child. So I was curious about, you know, just talking about a little bit about the prison to pipeline. And Josh, I'd love to hear your thoughts about this as well. Knowing that a strong educational background decreases the likelihood of going to prison, what do you all think that schools, families, and lawmakers can do earlier to ensure that we prevent young people from entering the carceral system?
Did you want, Josh, go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead. I'll just speak briefly and then I'll let you go, Jennifer. I mean, the first thing that we should do is not over-criminalize youth behavior. I mean, there's different standards for actions that are committed by kids where I grew up in the northern suburbs, and kids where I grew up in areas of Chicago, and Black kids who are committing very, very similar acts and are the same act, and the ones where I grew up don't go to prison. So they're putting police in schools and criminalizing normal youth behavior is something that just should not be happening. And so that is certainly one very, very practical thing that we can do.
I think some of what Josh said, I mean, we need to divest from the, you know, from policing, from incarceration, from America's pernicious investment in criminalization and in policing, and redirect those resources to education and to communities. I mean, we can see the, you know, the school to prison pipeline is in many respects a direct result of the of America's pernicious investment in these institutions, in criminalization and in policing and in incarceration. And so redirecting those resources to education and providing support for students like Andre, so that there isn't the opportunity for failure. There isn't the opportunity for slipping through the cracks like so many of our students do, because we haven't invested in the institutions, because we haven't allocated sufficient resources to prevent that from happening. So I really think it's a fundamental shift in America's values and in America's investment in our institutions.
Thank you both. I was thinking about how the laws in place have not been kind to people of color, Indigenous people, Black people in general. And it made me think about the 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution, how it abolishes slavery and voluntary servitude except as punishment for crime. And Josh, as a lawyer, as an attorney, How has this caveat in the Constitution prevented men and women whom you have represented from being released from prison?
Well, I mean, I guess the way I'd answer that is if you look at the criminal justice system, there is absolutely zero part of it that is not broken. From the evidence used to convict innocent people like Antonio, from the draconian sentences that are given to factually guilty or innocent people like Antonio, to cash bail, to the machinery of death, of putting people to death. I don't necessarily think that I certainly don't think it's unconstitutional, and I don't even necessarily believe that people shouldn't be punished for crimes that they commit, but that doesn't change the fundamental problem that our American criminal justice system is broken at every single level, and we need to start over.
Yeah, I agree with you. I was thinking about South Africa, and after apartheid, there was a whole new, law, like the Constitution was rewritten in order to talk about the issues that were happening during apartheid. And I feel like I think the fear that a lot of Americans have is we're used to a certain thing. We're used to this idea of having law and order, having the police, having someone to put you in jail. I think about my students, and I bring them up a lot because they're a large part of my practice. But there is a time where I used to have career costumes in my classroom. And I would have, the chef and the firefighter, and I had the police. And I remember the students all gravitated towards the police. There was always a robber and the police. There's always someone trying to capture someone else. And really later, maybe like I've been there for 17 years, so probably like 10 years ago, I got rid of the police costumes in my classroom because I didn't want this idea that this it's ingrained in our psyche in a way that we believe that this is how you find some form of law, some sort of order, having a police presence. So I got rid of them and tried to find a different way to have the conversation with young children as young as 4 and 5 about how we can defund the police and create these conversations early. So I was thinking, I was hoping that we can go back to Patrick and see if we can check in and see if we can circle back to you. And I just want to make sure that if you are watching us this evening, please send your questions and your comments to us so that we can start getting those questions. In about 10 minutes, we'll start reading those to you. So Patrick, I'm hoping that we can hear what you were saying about your experience and in Stateville. You mentioned that you had written an article that then became a part of a statute. So can you start there again? And we can hear, we need to unmute you, but hopefully we can hear your story again.
I had to move around my country. Our country is really bad, but basically, I was speaking upon the idea that was going in desperation, actually being in segregation.
So, Patrick,
and back to that, inmates being.
So I'm sorry, Patrick, but for some reason it's still a bit. Now, see, I can hear you now. I'm like, what's going on? Yeah, it's kind of like going in and out.
That's
and it's kind of garbled. It sounds a little garbled. So you want to try it again? Let's see what happens.
How about now? Can you hear me better? Okay. So I'm seeing an idea that was desperation. Actually, I faced the death penalty and then watched a lot of inmates be executed, many of whom were wrongfully convicted, more or less knowing that that could have been me. And that became my motivation. And so while I was in Stateville, I actually was, I had unique ability to get the power and get in terrible trouble for it. And so I had a verbal disagreement with my warden. And basically, it made me 6 months to say that 6 months of segregation in Stateville F House, also known as the Panopticon, you know, it was just really harsh conditions. But the idea of the law had been born like years before. And writing our because the law was really just a random act. You know, you can't even really capitalize that. So it was very much a blessing. As well as taking the classes, because the classes allowed me to develop my class and my understanding, my social understanding, and be able to teach it. I hope you can hear me.
Thanks, Patrick. Again, for some, you know, the devil is a lie. It's trying to take us today, and I'm not trying to make it take us today. So I don't know if it's just where you are, where in the location you are, but we're hearing bits and pieces, and I just want to make sure that we tell your story. But I will say that if you are interested in knowing more about Patrick's story, he's everywhere on the internet. He has a wonderful podcast where he's interviewed by wrongful convictions. And we'll make sure that we have that link to you all so you can hear his story clearly. We are going to press forward in the conversation, but Patrick, know and believe that I'm centering you and I'm uplifting you, and I'm hoping that the connection spirits are like in our corner right now, because what you have to say is so important to me and important to all of us. I want to talk a little bit about, you know, due to the outbreak and COVID-19, in prisons, the governor of Illinois, J.B. Pritzker, has released over 4,000 incarcerated people from the carceral system. Many community members have biases and fears surrounding the release of men and women convicted of harsher crimes. What are your thoughts on decarceration and the fears and biases of community members who feel like their lives may be threatened upon the release of these men? And that can go to anyone, and I can say, you know, Josh, we can start with you, and then Jennifer, then Antonio. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Okay, sure. Look, I guess, you know, the reality is I applaud the state and J.B. Pritzker for using his commutation power and pardon power in certain circumstances. He is perhaps the only governor in this country who has utilized it with any sort of robustness at all during this COVID pandemic. You know, I think we have to point out that COVID is dire for people who are in jails and prisons, for all the obvious reasons that you can think of, all the people going in and out of prisons, the impossibility of social distancing, the absolutely horrid medical care in prisons, and the lack of soap and other protective gear and all the other things that you can imagine. So I applaud Pritzker for acting on that. The reality is he hasn't done nearly enough. No, I mean, I have multiple low-level offender clients that are still in prison, and with the exception, and J.B. Pritzker has done better than any, but across the country, people who are convicted of violent crimes are almost not being given any examination for release on commutation. So Antonio is a very, very limited exception. him and a few others in the state. So I think that's important to point out. I mean, I don't have the up-to-date statistics on recidivism rates, but the reality is elderly prisoners, people who commit violent crimes, even sexual assaults, are oftentimes much less likely to recidivate. And if you serve all this time in prison, I mean, I think just reality is when you age out of crime. So I think it's something like the age of 45 or 50, you don't have people committing violent crimes at that age. So when you have people who have served that much time in prison, for them to come out, the reality is they're not a danger to society.
And some of those thoughts as well. There's absolutely, I mean, so the United States is the global leader in incarceration rates. It's the global leader in COVID-19 rates, and it's the global leader in COVID-19 in prison rates. And so we need to take a long, hard look at why we are the global leader in all of those cases. So we certainly should not be incarcerating this many people. And so, as Josh said, we should be making far more aggressive steps. I mean, the only real way to deal with COVID-19 in prisons is to decarcerate. Prisons are not designed for a pandemic. There's no possibility for social distancing. Prisons are overcrowded in, at least 17 states in the United States, and they're overcrowded in at least 125 countries. So given how overcrowded prisons are, there is no possibility for social distancing, and there's no possible way of safely treating and dealing with COVID-19. So the most effective way is to decarcerate. And as Josh said, there's lots and lots of people who should be out right now. Certainly, even with respect to violent crimes, we can be looking at people who have served, a certain number of years, people who are older. And as Josh, I think, noted, there is no connection. All of the research shows that there is no connection between incarceration and safety. So incarcerating people it doesn't make communities safer anyway. So I think that when you're asking about people's biases and fears about decarceration, I think the first thing everybody needs to know is incarceration there is no data that supports incarceration making communities safer.
Antonio, love to hear your thoughts as well.
Yeah, I think that I think America is hypocritical. With one voice, they want us to change. They want us to be good. With the next voice, they say lock them up and throw away the key. For me, when I was dealing with the COVID virus in Stateville, a lot of people in there was forgotten about. I think that prisoner did a wonderful job in releasing as many people as he did. Like I take myself, an innocent man, in 2005, my 103 year sentence was nearly a death sentence, because I was diagnosed with sarcoidosis, in which I had to wake up with a fan in my face just to catch a good breath. And so to leave me in prison with a virus that is so foreign and is so mysterious, to place judgment on whether or not I leave that says a lot about Americans. Like we can't neglect that. We can't throw that away. America cannot be so hypocritical. People suffering, people are struggling. Do you want us to change or do you not want us to change? You don't think that you can go to prison and reform? There was a lot of beautiful people in prison. They made a lot of foolish mistakes. Some innocent. But I know some that's not innocent, but they are damn sure, excuse my language, they are reformed. Rehabilitation is a real thing. For so long, we did it on our own without a program. So now we got a handout, someone to bring a program, someone to give us a formal education. So now we got even more hope, greater hope. It's so wrong to cast judgment. but then you consider yourself a good person. Oh, never let them out. I'm the best person in the world, right? That's hypocritical. It's hypocritical. And if your loved ones was here and you seen their growth and you seen their maturity levels and you seen how they risen from one level of mentality that's not acceptable by no standards to good people, you would want them to be released from prison just the same. So I'm a little bit torn about the question. So yeah.
Thank you, Antonio. It was making me think when you were talking about the play, one of the plays that we recorded for this event, that's on the website, on the Goodman's website. It's called Paroled. It's by Anthony Ehlers. And the play features a character named Anthony Moon. And Anthony Moon describes the complexity of leaving the prison institution with these words. This is what the character says. I'm just saying, they just throw these guys back out into society, then wonder why most of them come back. Society wants to punish us. Don't do shit for them. Don't give them shit. But it's like they forget. These are the same guys coming back out of society. They come out worse. Society is not safer. You would think society would want these guys to be better than since they're coming back out of this place, but no one gives a shit. And this is in his play, Paroled. And what you just said to me sort of highlights and amplifies Anthony's play in that play. And I wanted to ask you, what does that mean to have been released from prison, from this institution? What is that? What does freedom mean to you? And what has it done for you?
I don't think that I ain't never been free. So I still wrestle with what freedom is. And it's a lot of biasisms. Just because I walk out of a prison, that doesn't mean that I'm free. I'm still hunted from my past, even though I'm still face forward. Like that shit won't end. Like I'm so scarred, but I got to put on a face. I have to make people not fear what they said, what I was accused of. Don't fear me. I'm a good dude. I'm a good person. But I don't feel like I should have to do that. And that in and of itself, it incarcerates me. I'm on a long journey of having to prove myself to be a good person. I can't just be good. I caught a raw deal. I caught a raw deal just like so many other people. My story ain't original. It is not original. We catch raw deals. But I come from a people who were slaves. And we rose above that. We made it out. And I don't think that nothing can stop me. It doesn't matter what no one say. And even with that mindset, I still don't feel free. I still don't feel free. The laws is not favoring me. I just happen to catch a blessing and come in contact with some good, honest attorneys. And they heard my story and they knew the history about the corrupt cops and they did me that solid. They fought for me. And ain't nobody never fought for Antonio. My life wasn't easy then. It is not easy now. I don't know what it's like to be happy because I ain't never been happy. I stay to myself, but I'm broke. I've been broke for a very long time. I'm still like a 21-year-old kid wondering, why is this happening to me? Why did I have to go through that? You know what I mean? So you can't be free with those bricks that's stacked on my shoulders. I can't be free. So I'm moving at a snail pace. You know what I mean? And hopefully one day I will be free. But even if I never be free in myself, I'm gonna work damn so hard to free others. So I don't need nobody coming and framing somebody. Not on my watch, not in my community. We matter. We matter. When you see us, understand what you see. Yeah, we black. Yeah, that's true. We got our own sense of direction. We see things the way we see it. No one told them to don't give us the books, don't give us the education. No one told them to plant the drugs in our community. No one told them to fry our brain cells. No one told them to sit there and don't teach us how to recalibrate positively. They wanted us to be a broke people, and since that's what their aim is for us, they conspired against us. See, this story can never be about me. When I spoke about the kids, because that's what this whole world is about. It's about the children. If we don't protect them, if we don't give them a chance, fast forward, you'll be having another interview with someone that looked like me, that experienced the same thing as I, that sit there saying, man, I ain't never gonna be free. So now imagine that. Imagine thinking that I could never be free. Why would a person feel that they could never be free? Because the people that set up in these justice systems that's supposed to carry out the law and that's supposed to protect and serve are the people that does us the most harm. And so I'm very, very passionate about my transitioning and about the people that's coming out of MPEP transitioning and about the other people who is not going to be fortunate enough to have an MPEP. They're transitioning. You know what I mean? It's like, man, do you keep us broke? Or do you push us back into society and don't give us shit? What is it that you want from us? The world has broke us. Can we be fixed? But if you keep pressing us, we can never be fixed. We will never be able to be fixed. Because the more you try to pull us up, you shit on us. You say we ain't nothing. Excuse my language. So yeah, the story means something to me, and to keep my passions low, that's my answer. That's my response.
Antonio, thank you so much. You know, I mean, that's real. And I just want you to know that, you know, none of us are free until we all are free.
That's right.
Right?
Right.
And I think this is and while we kind of transition into our audience questions, what you said was just super powerful. And, you know, thank God that you're out to be able to share this message with us today. It really touched me. So I have a question for you. To introduce your play, you said that comedy was something you wanted to focus on. What role do you see comedy and playfulness having among young Black kids, especially in school?
Well, a lot of young kids don't know how to play no more. You see, the violence outside, you know, it changed. You know, we don't have parks to go to no more. You know, we got drugs on every other corner. We got people who don't understand us no more. We don't understand ourselves. So to be able to have fun, to be able to play, to be able to enjoy a comic book, to eat some candy, to laugh, that means something. For me, it was Saturday mornings cartoons. Like, you know, I often wish that I could still go back to that Saturday morning cartoon. Perhaps I was free at that time. But yeah, so
yeah, that your comic books and candy reminded me of when I was in high school. That same idea of like, Spider-Man comics were my first comic books I read. And I would sit in history class with the comic book inside of the history book, like you said, it was in a math book. And I would read, you know, cover to cover. And I would tell my classmates, like, give me another one. Like, I was just all into it. So, yes, Saturday morning cartoons, and the playfulness. Someone asked, what was the process to become a student at the Northwestern Prison Education Program? And I'm not sure if you want to answer that, or if Jennifer, you would like to take that.
Antonio, would you like to comment on it, or would you like me to?
We can both share. We can share it.
Okay.
Want me to start it?
Sure.
Well, the process was, it wasn't easy, that's for sure. We had to start with an essay, and we had to convince the faculty members. We had an interview, sit down interview, and where we had to present ourselves professionally, and we had to go through any process the same as anyone else to show that we were worthy of being in the program. And so, very few people, 20 people in the first cohort out of a whole system made it. And that's a big deal. That is a very big deal. It was not easy to get into that. It was a lot of competition, and yeah, Jennifer can help me with the rest.
Yeah, so you have to have a GED or a high school diploma to apply, and there is a written application, and then there are on the basis of the applications, we interviewed 40 people, and out of that 40, we offered admission to 20 students. So we admit 20 students per year, and we look for students. I mean, we offer, as I said, a full undergraduate curriculum. So students take everything from chemistry and biology and math to playwriting and history and literature. So we look for students who we think will, are ready to succeed in the program. Some of the students who applied the first year, some of the applicants who applied the first year and didn't get in, reapplied the second year, and some did get in that second year. So we have admissions every year, and we do, a lot of the applicants who don't get in have success in future years.
Did I read that in order to be a part of this class, you give up your privileges of going outside? Am I reading that? Did I read that correctly?
Well, I mean, we have to argue to get the students. So there, when their class time conflicts with yard time or with commissary, we have tried to work with the prison to give them detail yard on Saturday so that they would not lose their yard time or not lose their commissary. But we have not always had success with the prison working with us on that.
So we have time for our audience that's listening. We have a time for a few more questions. And while we're waiting for those questions to come in, I wanted to bring up something that I think is so important to this weekend. So this is the 4th of July weekend. For some of us in South and West Side communities, we are hearing an influx of fireworks, an influx of, they're just going off. There's currently going off outside my door right now. So, and I can smell the fumes. So I had a question, and this could be for anyone to answer, but in 1852, abolitionist and scholar Frederick Douglass wrote, what to the American slave is the 4th of July? In his speech, he answers, speaking from the perspective of the enslaved person. He says, a day that reveals to him, more than all other days in the year, the gross injustice and cruelty in which he is the constant victim. To him, your celebration is a sham, a thin veil to cover up crimes which would disgrace a nation of savages. There is not a nation on the earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than are the people of the United States at this very hour. So that's his quote. Having just recently been released, can you share talk about sort of this quote about how you mentioned earlier about, we were enslaved and we still persevered. Do you see any connections to this weekend? Is there mode for celebration? Do we still consider to celebrate a form of independence, even though our people were enslaved? And our true independence on the books was in 1865 during Juneteenth, which is June 19th. Can you just talk about, can you share a little bit about your thoughts on this quote? And this can be from anyone. Antonio, I'll start with you. Josh, I would love to hear some of your thoughts about Frederick Douglass' quote as well.
Yeah, I think that people we celebrate, well, I don't celebrate it, but a lot of people celebrate the 4th. A lot of people celebrate the 4th of July. And I just think it tells the American story. Fireworks, explosions, boom, everywhere, that tells the American story. We can't sleep on that. They don't celebrate Juneteenth. Now they ain't celebrating that. But I want to say that a lot of African Americans are just misled. So we don't understand our own history. We don't understand the process of 1865. So it's hard for them to navigate that when they're trying so hard to be a part of a culture, even though they're not accepted in their culture. You know what I mean? And so somewhere the schools drop the ball. So they don't really understand the importance of that history. And so, yeah, it's a sad story.
I mean, I don't have too much more to add. I mean, the reality is there's not one America. There's different Americas, and certainly two Americas for white people and Black people. And you know, I think I saw something on Twitter or Facebook today or something. It said, like, I've never heard of a Black person celebrating 4th of July. The reality is what Antonio said is what I thought was really compelling is America has a story, and the story is of part of that story is a history of systemic racism and slavery. And if we're gonna celebrate the story of America, we need to certainly tell the true story of America as we do that.
Absolutely. And Josh, since I have you here, I'm curious, what do you think the next steps can be for people watching right now? You know, how can they, you know, what can they do in terms of supporting what the work that you're doing and Jennifer and others are doing? You know, what are some steps that we can kind of move forward in order to decarcerate, defund, and give us free?
Well, there are some real practical steps that you can do at this very moment in time. I've been even a tiny bit slightly distracted on this because during this call, and I apologize for that if that's come through at all, in part because last night there was a story that was on NBC5 by Phil Rogers, a reporter, and you, when you introduced me, you documented the story of the first mass exoneration in the history of Cook County. And what that story told, and what I've been screaming about for many years, is that the officers who are responsible for framing 75 Black men are still on the force and still getting paid, and they've been, quote, investigated for the last 3 years by the city of Chicago while they're getting paid. These are 10 officers at least who the Cook County State's Attorney's Office have called liars and perjurers and have said that there are that they fabricate police reports and frame these 75 men. Now that's one story. That's the Watts story. Antonio's story is a Guevara story, and the officers who were involved in Guevara and framing him and at least 20 other people that we've already identified, and there's certainly many more, of homicides, and spent them to prison for decades. So the very practical thing you can do, as this story is before me, and I said I was a little distracted because it all of a sudden started getting tweeted around and by some powerful people with a lot of followers, and it is getting some attention finally, is you can contact the mayor via Twitter, via Facebook, or via any other thing and ask, what the hell is going on? Why is there no accountability for these officers? Why are there no accountability for the Guevara officers and involved in that too? And why, after 3 years, turning to the Watts in particular, are 10 officers who can't be called to testify, who are liars and who frame 75 Black men, still getting paid? So as we have this moment in time because of the George Floyd murder, where people are starting to finally pay attention to police accountability, and we have this mayor who talks big talk about the importance of police accountability in this city, the reality is across the country, we're finally maybe starting to see a little bit of accountability with criminal charges, some discipline by police officers. And in our own backyard in Chicago, there's none of that. There are officers who we know are liars and framers and perjurers who have been paid millions of dollars by our taxpayers for the last 3 years. So you can ask Mayor Lightfoot and the superintendent of Chicago why that is happening.
Thank you so much. I have a question for Antonio. If you could create a dream NPEP program course that you would have liked to have taken, what would you create?
If I could say that.
Yes, if you could create a dream course, a dream class that you could take at NPEP, what would it be?
Oh, you know, I just wrote something about this before I left. What I would propose for NPEP is community activist course, so that we can learn how to rebuild our community, so we can learn how to, you know, build a community in NPEP and outside of NPEP. You know, those aren't courses that you can find anywhere. To be able, because we got a lot of people who exploit our communities. They exploit our blackness. You know, they don't really teach us how to build. You know what I mean? So now we dependent. So a course that teaches this, it gives us independence. We know how to structure. You know, we know how to build foundations. We know how to lay one brick upon the next. You know what I mean? And so if we can get that going, we could begin to build our community. We could begin to cut our grass. We could begin to trim our trees and refix the broken windows. You know, we can grow independence from the community activist perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
Those are who you see that's fighting all the time.
Right.
So if we can get that course in, I believe that it can make a significant impact in and out of prison.
That made me think of collectives like the Let Us Breathe Collective, BYP 100. There are lots of young people in the streets, you know, fighting for injustice, interpersonal justice, as well as state-sanctioned justice. So young people are in the streets, they are working, they are speaking out against things that are happening. But I love that idea. This question is for here's another question. Incredibly powerful, inspiring, Antonio. Maybe for Dr. Lackey, why aren't there more programs as extensive as NPEP? What can we do to bring more such programs? This is our, let me just say, this is our final question. So after our final question and Dr. Lackey responds to this, then I would love for Antonio to have the final word before we end for the evening.
Thank you. So I think one of the reasons, so states are not investing in education, post-secondary educational opportunities for people who are incarcerated. So these sorts of programs have to be funded either through grants or through massive support from home institutions. I actually think institutions with the kinds of resources that a Northwestern has have a moral obligation to provide these sorts of programs. So we don't get $1 from the state. The program is entirely funded either through support from Northwestern and we won $1 million grant from the Mellon Foundation. So I think one of the reasons is that states are not investing in these programs, and I think that we need more institutions to do so, more colleges and universities. I think that there should be enormous pressure put on institutions like Northwestern. Institutions like Northwestern, the University of Chicago, institutions that have resources and can put some of those resources towards programs like this.
I think that is so important, especially when you find out that a lot of these institutions received funding from enslaved people in this country. So if you go back and you look at some of these institutions and they're founded in the 18-something, trust and believe that money came from enslaved people. So I appreciate everything that you've shared, Jennifer and Josh and Antonio, and to our dear Patrick, who was not able to stay connected. He decided to just stay out of the conversation just so it didn't interrupt any further, but you all can find more information about him online. Patrick Pursley, fantastic gentleman with a lot of knowledge. Antonio, I want to leave it to you, and I just want to thank you all so much. Thank you to the Goodman Theatre. Thank you to the Northwestern Prison Education Program. So everyone that's watching this evening, Antonio, this is to you. We leave the final words in your voice.
Okay, my final words are my beginning words. You know, this is where we start at. The moment we roll over, roll out our bed, that's where we start at. We don't wait for nobody. We get up and we do what we supposed to do. We ain't no lazy people. We work hard. Hell, we were slaves. You can't be a slave and lazy. I'm sure Massa wouldn't have accepted that. So when they come saying we lazy, hell, we know that's a lie. I want them to understand one last thing about this play. I always turn back to the kids, because if we don't reach back to the kids, we can't change nothing about our circumstances. So we got to reach at the kids. Let them have some cookies. Let them have some comic books. Let them do their thing. Let's encourage them. So every parent that's listening, encourage your kid to read. Encourage your kids, especially if you're African American. I got nieces and nephews and my grandkids. The kids is what matters. Don't even worry about the old slave songs. We don't need to sing them no more. We don't need to stay in that same spirit. We ain't that. We a whole new being. We a whole new people. So nobody can break us. You know what I mean? And if we ain't free in this world, I'm sure we'll be free in another one. So to the whole world that's listening, you know, I encourage y'all to just be good. Do your best. I mean, don't let nobody say what you can't do. They say my outdate was 2048. I'm home in 2020.
Yes, sir.
That's what's up. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, everyone. Antonio, wonderful words. Jennifer, Josh, Patrick, Goodman Theatre, Northwestern Prison Education Program. Thank you to all of you watching this evening. Do something, right? Do something.
Do something.
Get involved. Get involved. Thank you all. And this will end our event this evening. Feel free to look at those plays that you didn't get a chance to. If you didn't get a chance to look at them, they'll be on the Goodman website. Feel free to leave your comments. Thank you again.